Hello everyone, hope you're doing well. It's time to have a look at some more extras that are on the first iteration of the update 2.29 dev server. There's a ton of different things that are happening, and covering them all can be quite arduous, but also I think it's important to get as much information out there as possible. The first vehicle we're going to be having a look at is the Fuso, because the Fuso is actually losing some of its capabilities, and that kind of sucks for it. It's losing two 150mm guns. You can see here that it has these ones in these blisters on the side, and on the live server there is actually a gun here, and also there is a gun here, and they're just removing them. So I'm guessing it's a historical change. That sucks for the Fuso that it loses some of its capabilities. But there is a slightly nice thing on it. It does gain one 25mm cannon. And no, I am not going to find where it is, because there are millions of them on this thing. But just believe me that there is one more 25mm on this vehicle. Another thing that's pretty cool is actually for Britain, the Wasp HAS. This vehicle is not just going to have access to AS-11s. You can see the AS-11s here. It's also going to have two AS-12s that it can bring along. The difference between them is the AS-12s get way higher firing range and also penetration on the good old, missiles themselves, and the missile guidance time is a lot longer too. The general speed is pretty much the same, but it just means you're going to pack a bigger punch with more penetration at longer ranges with the good old Wasp. On top of this, the Challenger Mark II armor has supposedly been updated, and I mean supposedly because it has been changed, but since it's the dev server, many different things at that time. Generally, armor is one of those things that's always skew with for a vehicle, and sometimes it comes through, sometimes it doesn't. So just to give you a look at this updated armor, let's use the protection map on 3BM42, the standard round that you'll face in this thing. Oh dear. It looks like we still have issues with the Challenger Mark II's armor. So updated, maybe, but ain't making any difference. The next vehicle is the Mars, which gets a ridiculous buff actually. The Mars 15 that you'll find in the French tech tree, the 90mm APFS DS slinger, actually has a new transmission setup, so instead of just being able to go 75 kilometers an hour forward, it can also go backwards at 75 kilometers an hour too. So you can fly backwards in this thing, meaning that it's going to be a lot more easier to move around in this, and you can see here with it that you can just fly as you go backwards. So this is really nice for the vehicle. Positioning in it's going to be super key, especially since it isn't a huge vehicle. You can hide it in much easier areas now with this type of mobility, and also pop smoke and just get away from the place to reposition. It also means that you can change, go 75 both ways, really nice for the vehicle, big positive. The other one is the KPZ-70. So the KPZ-70, which is the better version than the MBT-70 because it has the better reload in the German tech tree, it is getting a stabilizer. Now you may think, well, it already has a stabilizer, doesn't it? On the 152, yes, but it's also getting a stabilizer on this one, the 20mm Rheinmetall 202. So this will be a lot easier to fire on the move. It will be a lot easier to have a contact with helicopters and things like that, and also even light vehicles trying to take them out. So that will be nice for it on the vehicle. They also have removed the G limiter for now on the earlier F-16s, so the F-16As should be a little bit more maneuverable compared to what they were previously. We're going to have to test it out and see how it is, and also remember, just like armor on ground vehicles, flight models on air vehicles is something that consistently change before the dev server hits the live server. So, it's nice to have, but just be careful with those ideas. At the same time, they have added in some stuff for the devs and also testers, repair cost using playtime, and also capture allowed. So repair cost using playtime is the dynamic repair cost that people have talked about. So the longer you last in a battle, the higher your repair cost will be until it hits the max. So if you get nuked very early on, then you'll pay a very small repair cost. Whereas if you last longer, this technically you should have had more actions, you will pay a higher repair cost. Also, the capture allowed setup is for trying to combat botting. So if somebody gets reported a lot as a bot, they will have to do a capture before they enter a battle in order to prove, well, that they're not a bot. It's pretty much as simple as that. I feel like there's going to be a few people who are going to troll others with this, but also at the same time, as long as it makes or has an effect, then that's positive. Another thing that has also turned up, this might take a little bit of time to find, is a new plane. And this plane is in the files, but not technically on the dev server itself. And I may have completely broken it. It is the AV8B Plus. It's coming in for America. Sorry, no, it's not coming in for America. My bad. It's actually coming in for Italy. But it is not confirmed whether this thing will come for this update or later on. It is just sat in the files there. So just to let you know that it does exist and it is sat around the place. Also, at the same time, you have the Étendard, which is also around the place that we showed earlier. So make sure to watch out for that one. And there has been some R73 changes. So with the MiG-29 SMT coming in, it does get the R73, which is obviously very powerful. But they have changed it and made it even more powerful than it was previously. So looking at the changes that they've made to it, the booster thrust vectoring angle has gone from 0.0275 to 0.045. Then the stat card launch distance is now 30,000 meters instead of 8,000. The guidance, the IRCM baseline lock range is now 0 meters, not 300. The delay is 0.15 instead of 0.3. And also the proximity fuse trigger radius is now 6 meters instead of 3. So big buffs for the R73, and we'll have to see how that works in game. I'm sure many people are not looking forward to facing this missile because it's looking pretty strong. At the same time, they have removed a stabilizer for a iconic vehicle sat in the Chinese tech tree. The M8 LAC no longer gets its stabilizer on its 37mm. But, surprisingly, for some reason, even though this one has lost its stabilizer, if you have a look at the Grant 1, which is in the American tech tree, it actually has gained a stabilizer on its 37mm. So we're a little bit all over the place with the stabs, putting them here, taking them away from areas, and it is just a vertical stab, so you know, the shoulder stab, but it's quite nice for the vehicle. Also at the same time, you got the M8 LAC in the American tech tree, and this one does not have its stabilizer either, so looks like it's just gone, reduced to atoms. They also added clutch braking to every tracked tank, so we'll have to see how that affects its maneuverability, especially with people who use more realistic controls. Then many mid-tier Chinese MBTs had a ton of armor changes to them. This is mainly because they're based off T-54s and T-55s, and T-54s and 5s also had a ton of changes to them as well. The main changes are they're changing certain parts of the armor from RHA to CHA, and also bringing in some variable thickness stuff on top of that. So don't be surprised if a lot of T-55s and T-54s armors work differently pre-updates compared to post-update, because those are things which are changing. The Leclerc got an engine buff on all of the Leclercs. It basically went from 1,474.5 horsepower to 1,500, so it won't make a huge difference, but technically it should add slightly more mobility to the vehicle, but we're talking about very, very small amounts of decimal percentages there. And also there's been a ton of bomb changes, so you might want to have a look at the data mines, to see how much tonnage change has there been on specific bombs. So if you'll be able to take out bases or go after vehicles in the way of ground forces or naval, because they're just moving them around a lot. I did mention this last time as well, that they're changing a lot of the blue water tech trees in the highest echelon, changing around a lot of RP and also changing around a lot of where vehicles are. It is good to familiarize yourself with these changes before they come out, so therefore you can get yourself these vehicles before they move them up in rank, therefore changing their RP cost, changing their modification cost, and also making them harder to get. So just make sure to focus on that, make sure to get it done and sorted. And just as an extra little tidbit, I thought I'd show you another vehicle that's sat in the files. This is the Loire 130, and we'll see where it ends up in the tech tree. As always, I hope you have a wonderful day, and I'll see you next time. I'd just like to thank Brendan Quinn, Vilneus, Character Fuel, Juan the Panda, Carrion Crow, Gus Irenicus, Pyman, Merciless Reaper, Orange Tail, Teddy, Daniel Stanton, Moxie, B. Young, Bareen, Peter Grayling, Alan Hacker, Sem Alslan, Uncle Bean, and Derek R., and also Lafouche for supporting the channel.